What is up, everybody? I am your host, Shane Mallory, joined by my co-host,
Ricky DeCosta.
Tell the folks what time it is.
Run it back.
Run it back. Listen, people, rather than continuously shouting out all these episode numbers, we have a lot of different content that we've been putting together. I promise it's going to drop for you guys soon. We'll just let you know, get ready for a lot of different content fairly soon and a possible change of scenery, too, as well, with how we're going to be doing the show. We're work in progress here, but don't forget, people, before we get into our action-packed show today, please like, comment, and subscribe. We're looking for those 5-star reviews on all our major platforms. You heard a shout-out off the top Sports at the last time. They continue to put out some fantastic content. I'm checking out some of their shows as well. Great stuff. Can't wait to go on there again. We'll definitely reach out at some point in the coming months and definitely see if we can do another collab. But again, like, comment, and subscribe, people, please. We're looking for those 5-star reviews. Hey, you like our video so much, you can click that little bell icon in the description, and that'll give you an alert anytime any one of our videos
Listen,
drops.
here's what I know. Them New York fans better be listening to that podcast. Go New York.
Yo, go New York, go New York, go is absolutely true. The Knicks pull out a great victory last night. They beat the Indiana Pacers to go up 2-0, but it was not without its drama, okay? In the second quarter, Brunson leaves, doesn't play the entire second quarter, essentially, okay? He's gone. We're thinking we might not be able to see him, the rest of the game. We don't know what's going on. You're kind of preparing for the worst, especially with how this Knicks season has kind of gone, injuries-wise. You fast forward to the second half. There he is coming out like Willis Reed.
Willis Reed, baby.
Willis Reed in the NBA Finals back in the 70s.
Hey, at least it wasn't, Paul Pierce coming out of a wheelchair. You know what I mean?
Very true, man. Very true. But listen, I got to tell you, he gutted it out, and he had to, because while he comes back in and is basically the hero of the game, we'll definitely give other people their flowers too as well. OG, who was crushing the Pacers in that first half.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Comes down on a late break on a layup. Okay. Comes down late, kind of off camera. I saw him get up gimping right away. And then when he didn't make it down the court at all and was still down on the other side, that's when I really got worried. You saw him really hobbling up. The reports right now are at least a hamstring. He's already been ruled out for game 3. We don't know the possible future. But the Knicks had to go and get that game. Jalen Brunson found a way. Shout out to my man, Josh Hart, though, man. I mean, literally,
He played every minute of every game.
The dude is a monster, man, and he is just so important to what the Knicks are doing right now.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Grabbing offensive rebounds, playing tough defense, making timely shots, driving to the hoop, orchestrating, and sometimes playing that other point guard when Jalen needs a chance to kind of go and catch a blow or get off.
And listen,
ball.
they're disrespecting him. They're leaving him wide open for those 3-point shots. And guess what? He's been hitting them.
He has been hitting them. So give me your thoughts just on kind of the Knicks as a whole right now. Obviously, the Brunson performance, OG, these injuries. Mitchell Robinson, now we just found out, too, is out for the season as well.
Listen. I'm super excited. I'm super hype. And, listen, we should be chanting, we want Boston. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, right, there's a little somberness, right? Because, look, this is the issue with Tibbs. Right, his players break down because
plays him a lot,
plays him too many minutes. And the thing is, it's like an Iron Man. It's like a badge of honor. These guys have been, running it for 40, 42 minutes. I think Josh Hart's averaging 46 minutes, right? Something crazy.
A lot.
And so, nothing but respect and toughness. And I think at the end of the day, New York, that's why we love them so much, is because it's blue collar. They're coming to work every day. They're not taking lunch. They're just going straight to their business, and they're winning these games. And here's the other thing. I thought the Knicks
such a collective effort, too.
Collective effort. I thought the Knicks would have slowed it down a little bit. I thought they would have tried to shorten the game.
It's interesting that you bring that up.
But they've been running. Right?
Yeah. They're beating the Indiana Pacers at their style and their pace of game.
They're leading the playoffs in fast break.
Yep.
They're leading the playoffs in offensive rebounds. So all of a sudden, the Knicks are doing something tremendously special, and all those second chance points are what's really being making the difference, because they're like 6-1 in these clutch time games, right? So they've been tested, and they're proven now. But you start to get concerned. If Brunson goes down, right, then
he's questionable right now for game 3.
He's questionable. Again, if I'm Tibbs, do I make a strategic decision? right? Normally when a team goes up 2-0 and they're going back to the opponent's place,
Just
there's
segued into what I wanted to
large
ask.
percentage
Yep.
of the time, right? I don't know the specific percentage, but it's probably like 75% of the time that home team wins that game 3.
Yeah.
And so
It's the I like to commonly I like this reference to it. It's referred to as the buzzsaw game. You go up 2-0, you're at home, you did what you were supposed to do.
Yep.
You protected home court. Now you're going on the road for the first time. And one thing that I always love is playoff series doesn't start until the opposing team wins on the other team's floor. But that buzzsaw game, the Pacers have to come out and win this game. And I think very similar to the 76ers, you're going to get that hard punch early on to see if the Knicks, they can just kind of knock the Knicks out.
What type of basketball coach is Tibbs, right?
Sure.
Can he be strategic enough to say, I am willing to sacrifice game 3 to win game 4 because you only need to steal one?
Do you just sit Brunson?
Right?
Do you just
maybe
sit
not
Brunson
sit
that
him,
game?
let him play, but use him as a decoy, right? Make sure you
Or if
only
they get out, if the game gets out of hand at the same time,
exactly
you can take
see
them
if
out.
the rest of the team can keep the game close. Because here's the thing: when Brunson went down, the Knicks took the lead.
Sure.
Right? And then the Pacers came back and really took off, especially late in the second quarter.
Sure.
But they played well. They kept it close within striking distance, and Brunson was able to come back and really set them up for success.
Absolutely.
But again, I would be looking to sacrifice game 3. Statistics say you're most likely going to lose game 3 anyway. So with that being the case, right, definitely no OG. And listen, from a bigger perspective, yes, sit Brunson. That would be the ultimate chess move. But if you decide to play him, make sure he's a decoy. Make sure you're not using him too many minutes, right? And if you see the game get out of hand, right, then you call it a quits. The reason why I would play him and use him as a decoy rather than sit him is because the Pacers don't know how healthy he is. The Pacers don't know his full capability, as well as the inspiration that will give the rest of the team.
Sure.
Right? Because they're going to double Brunson. We've seen that.
Yep.
So now that means the other guys are going to get wide open shots. So with those wide open shots, they could really give the Pacers a game. And defensively, right, that's where the opportunity is. Right now, the Pacers are getting upset over these calls and the coach is trying to
much,
elude.
man. The NBA playoffs have been so enjoyable, and I think one of the primary reasons is that the officials are allowing them to play basketball.
But also,
They're not getting ticky-tack with the foul calls all the time.
But here's the thing, right? Like the teams that don't play defense are the ones that are complaining. If the Indianapolis
and the teams
Pacers,
that don't play as physical are much more based on offensive finesse style.
So the
game.
Pacers are
Look
trying
at
to
the
be
Nuggets and the
physical,
Wolves on the other
and
side too.
There you go. Like you don't have it in your DNA right now, you know. And listen, I like Halliburton. But you know what? Like, again, granted, he does have the little back issue or whatever, but he doesn't seem like the same guy. He doesn't seem like a playoff guy because he's a little bit like an Embiid. He can score a lot of points, but come the fourth quarter, he really starts to...
Late game execution is definitely still a question.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, if the Pacers want to win, they should be starting... TJ McCollum is his name?
The boy that was giving Brunson some problems.
I hate to say it, man. He might not be able to shoot that well.
McConnell, I think.
McConnell, right?
TJ
McConnell, something like that, right?
I think it's TJ. He was talking junk to some old Knicks too that were in the front row.
Respect.
I love it though.
Respect.
Man. I love that.
But here's the thing: he's busting his hump. You see what I'm saying? I think he was like 12 points, 10 assists, something like that. As a matter of fact, I have that right here. Hold on.
Played solid, man.
Right?
He had 10
too
when he was
10 points and 12 assists.
Okay.
Right?
And he was guarding Brunson for a significant portion of the game.
Exactly.
So I mean that's a tough assignment in and of itself.
So again, if the Pacers want to win, sacrifice some offense, shorten the game, and put McCollum on Brunson the whole game.
I mean,
but Tibbs also has to counter that. Tibbs has to play a 10-man lineup.
Sure.
Whoever's on that bench should play in game 3.
Game 3. So it's interesting the strategic move that you kind of some would bring up. Does Tibbs sit there and say, I only got to get one of these two? We're in a dominant position. I mean, OG we already know is out. If I'm being honest right now, I would just tell Knick fans to prepare. I wouldn't expect to see OG back in the series. That's my personal opinion. I think the hamstring is a very tricky injury, and if you try to bring a guy back before, you can end up kicking him out for a substantially longer amount of time.
Here's the thing, right? Injury. I think you give him a week, right? So I think, again, sacrifice, right? Yeah. So no game 3, no game 4, right? And then there's a nice little break because they go every other day. Yep. But then when they
But
travel
they get less
again,
break than the Western Conference for some reason, and I don't really understand
it balances itself out
I
at
hope
the end,
so,
right?
because
it does.
like the Nuggets just got 3 days. The Knicks are only going to get 2.
But then the Nuggets are going to go back to back. So what's going to happen is
so their series will shorten
game
as it
4
tightens.
to game 5 will go from a Tuesday to a Friday.
Okay.
And then game 6,
and then it's just going to
right,
be
we'll
day
go
between
Monday.
more or less
No,
for
we'll
travel.
go Monday.
Okay.
But then game 7
So
is
day
one
for
day
travel,
afterwards.
day for practice once you get there. And
Yeah,
then game.
listen, I got it right here. I'll pop it up, right? So it goes Friday, Sunday, Tuesday, Friday, Sunday.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So the Tuesday to Friday is the big day off, and then, one day after that.
Yeah, so I mean, listen, there's the if OG is not going to play, I lean on the side of they're going to say Brunson's questionable. If Brunson is 70%, Brunson is going to play. I just think Brunson is that type of a player.
Again, you play him, but you don't play him 40 minutes.
Well,
right?
especially in game
And
3 if it gets out of hand early.
And here's the thing: I would actually play him off ball, so don't let him bring it up the court, right? Because again,
Did
you
that a
don't-
little bit more last night.
Yeah, you don't want that.
Josh Hart's been getting on the ball a lot more this playoffs. He's been huge, man.
He's
been
a
huge.
Swiss Army knife, right?
Yeah.
He could do everything,
It's a
right?
guy that you just love. It's very similar, different positional skill set, but it's very similar to what a Draymond Green brought to Golden State.
100%.
Just
That's a
lot of
perfect
different-
analogy.
Filling
Perfect.
a lot
But
of
he's a better
different
scorer.
needs. Yes, I would say he's a slightly better scorer, slightly better athlete all around. I would give Draymond probably the edge on defense just because of his length. He's got like crazy long arms for his size. But Hart's, his tenacity, his ability to attack the boards is just, as a guard, I don't know. The last guard I can remember that attacked the boards like him, honestly, young Dwayne Wade. A young, in his prime Dwayne Wade attacked the boards in a similar fashion like that of a Josh Hart. Josh Hart really impresses me, and the value can't be stated.
Can't be
enough.
quantified,
Yeah, it really
100%.
can't be quantified.
But
what it
again,
does.
I would still want to see McBride as a primary ball
love
handler.
him
The
too,
moment
man.
doesn't seem too big for him, so trust him.
Got some dog in him.
Right,
He
you
played
know?
great last night,
He did.
man.
He
Tough
did.
defense, came in the spot, filled his role. Let me ask you this. With all these injuries, okay, the healthy Brunson, right? Can they win this series without OG?
Yes, they could win the
I agree.
series as long as Brunson
agree.
is healthy. They could
agree.
win this series. But again, I think strategy has to come into play, right? Off the rip, as of now, with these injuries, I'm assuming this is a 6-game series. So I'd be
Okay.
prepared to try to win it in Indiana. So I'd sacrifice game 3, win game 4, try to close it out in game 5. If I don't close it out in game 5, I'll close it out in game 6.
Sure.
Right?
Very similar to how they beat Philly.
100%.
You're just trying to take one of these next 2. So I mean,
100%.
yeah, they have the tremendous advantage of kind of just more or less seeing how game 3 plays out. And if Indiana doesn't just come out and punch you in the mouth right away, who knows?
But they don't have that toughness. They don't have that toughness,
Yeah,
right?
listen, I expect Indiana to come out and throw a punch early in that game.
Here's
I do.
where we're
and
going
they can
to
score quickly. That's the thing about it.
If Indiana wants to win, here's the 2 things that are going to happen. You're going to see Pascal Siakam go off because OG was holding him down. Right. In the game, he only had
Precious to step up.
14 points, right? And he had 9 rebounds. Most of that came after OG went out.
OG was an animal.
Right,
OG was an
and he
absolute
was
animal
scoring. He
last
was doing
night.
everything. So
He was awesome.
So that's what we're really gonna miss. And I think Siakam is really gonna go off because of that. Right.
Okay.
So that's where we hopefully Precious can step up and really, that's his former teammate.
Yeah.
Take some pride in that. But then secondly,
Look for Precious too. I think Precious is going to answer the bell. He got a substantial amount of time this year with the injuries to the Knicks front line early on in the season. Or I should say at the midway point to later point. He got a lot of time. I think he is ready to step up and answer the call. I really do.
Yeah, that doesn't scare me, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, TJ McCollum, right?
McCollum, yeah.
Right? He's the one I'm worried about.
Yeah, it's something. I'm drawing a blank on the name right now too. It's McCollum.
McCollum.
Yeah,
McCollum. TJ
Yep.
McCollum.
Yes.
Right? If he plays more than Halliburton, we're going to lose. Right? Those are the 2 things that are going to happen in game 3. If the or let me not say that. For the Pacers to win, right? TJ's got to do his thing, guarding Brunson, and then Siakam is going to go off.
Quick question for you before we segue in over to the next series, though. Jalen Brunson, where would you rank him amongst point guards in the league right now? Just curious.
Look, ultimately, right, like, let's just focus on the playoffs right now.
Sure.
I think you
leading
can't,
the playoffs for the record in scoring.
I
He's
think
the
you
number one
can't
scorer in the
argue
playoffs.
he's the second best player in the playoffs left right now.
So I think that
Right.
more or less would say. Would you?
So,
is it fair to
and
call
Edwards-
him a top 5 point guard in the NBA?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. Right. He's definitely stepped up to do that. Listen, obviously,
We
you
got to
gotta
make
give
that
respects.
a poll. Let's make that a quick little poll, though, if we can. to the people out there, where does Jalen Brunson rank as a point guard in the NBA right now? Is he a top 5 guard? We want to get your thoughts on that.
And here's the one thing that I'll say where he's number one. And again, you can, let's say, argue like a Steph Curry's
Sure.
1A, 1B type of situation.
Sure.
Jalen Brunson, what separates him is not the points, it's the leadership. Right?
That's a good point.
And so that is an intangible skill that he possesses
Sure.
to be a leader of men, to inspire them to do things that they don't normally do or would do.
Sure.
Right? And again, he's playing with his brothers, right? Between Hart and DiVincenzo.
Sure.
So ultimately, that inspiration to me is what I'm also seeing in Anthony Edwards right now.
Okay.
So that combo,
Sure.
right? That combo of leadership is elevating and making others better. And that's something you can't quantify. So that's why, he's such an elite point guard right now.
Love it, man. I love it. Yeah, I easily think he's top 5, and he's playing as good as anyone in the playoffs right now. So wherever that ranks him, I'm okay with it. Knicks fans are extremely happy with what we're seeing right now. Moving on to the other side, okay, the Western Conference. This series, I think, right now has shocked NBA pundits and experts all over. I can tell you right now, I am extremely surprised. I thought Denver would win the series. I thought it would be tough, but I thought they would win. I did not think the T-Wolves would come out right now and punch him in the mouth the way they have, and that's exactly what they've done. After game 1, I sat there and I was just like, you know what? It was like Denver did what they normally do to everybody else, and Minnesota just stood strong, beat them late. Okay, Denver took a first loss. It's going to be a tougher series. They'll come out in game 2. Game 2 was a beatdown from the start. I mean, no Rudy Gobert, and I could argue they looked almost better, especially offensively. Like Rudy Gobert, I'm not trying to take anything away from him. He's an awesome defensive player, but on the offensive side of the ball, limited, not really a threat. Reed and Karl Anthony Towns give Jokic a lot of problems. And I don't think Jokic was kidding when they asked him after game 1, what could you do? Make me a clone. He's exhausted, man. You got Karl Anthony Towns coming out. He's fresh. He bangs with them for a little bit of a while. All of a sudden, he comes off. And then you've got big Naz Reid stepping out there. And he's forcing Jokic to play more defense because just like Cat, he can step out and hit the 3. The Minnesota Timberwolves are perfectly designed to beat the Denver Nuggets. And I have to be honest with you, while I've been high on the Denver Nuggets all year, I don't see an adjustment outside of this. Denver has to come out in game 3 and just say, we are going to be the more physical team. Like, that is all they can really do. From a strategic standpoint, I don't see any X's and O's changes they can make to really change what's going on right now.
Well, Denver's lacking the
size
depth
and length to match up with them defensively.
Denver's lacking the depth.
Offense.
Denver is lacking the depth, right?
totally
And that's
agree.
their biggest issue. They can lean on the Lakers, and they're a bad matchup for the Lakers because
agree.
the Lakers usually put her
This is
put
a
her out
bad
of gas
matchup for them.
right?
Yep.
These young boys, right, that can match them in size and length,
Yep.
right? All of a sudden, right, the difference in the game is not Murray, slightly Murray. It's not Jokic, right? But either Gordon or Porter will go off, but not both. And then Caldwell Pope, he's completely taken out of the game.
Yeah.
So now you're just left with Jokic,
Yep.
right, to do everything. And to your point, he's playing defense now.
He has to play defense.
Right?
Yeah.
And
you usually could find ways for him to kind of rest and
so
chill.
and let's say this, for all those people that chose him as the MVP, the one thing he
We're gonna get
doesn't
into
have,
that too, man. We are going
right?
to get into that.
That defensive
He's
effort
never
is
been a great
questionable.
defensive player. Yeah.
It's
100%.
questionable, right? And so now you're starting to see some of his deficiencies because yes, he's a wonder
Fantastic
on
offensive
offense,
player.
right? And can
a point
compile a ton of stats.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, on the other side of the ball, right, he's not that good.
Yeah.
I'd say he just doesn't have that defensive ability.
I'm with you. You're not insulting him. You're just stating the truth. He is not. Defense is not the strong suit of his game. He's not. Jokic is not known for his overwhelming athleticism. It's his intellect, it's playmaking, his ability to see the floor.
Yeah.
But on defense, again, that can help to a certain. But sometimes there's the physical level of ability where you've got to get out and guard the big to the 3, be able to close out on shooters. He struggles with that, and this series is really exposing that. That, and to your point, the lack of depth. And while it seems like they appear to be the somewhat bigger team against the Lakers, they look small in this series. When you watch Minnesota just go and swarm the ball on that pick and roll, I mean, you just see these guys, Jaden McDaniels, Jalen Allen Greer. These guys are just engulfing these guys on these screens. They're swallowing them up. They're slapping at the ball. I text my friends in a group chat for basketball the other night. I said, this defense is about as good as I've seen since the bad boys from Detroit back in the early 2000s. The reincarnation of that. Chauncey Billups, Ben Wallace, Tayshaun Prince, all them boys, where games were going to like the 60s and 70s.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I think the big thing with Minnesota right now is that separate from everyone knowing their roles,
Sure.
they are all 6'8" and taller.
Yeah.
Right? So
And they
they're
want this. You can see it, man.
I mean, I don't know everyone's wingspan, but it seems like they all
It's
have like a
long team,
7'1"
man.
wingspan,
It's a very
right?
long team.
So
There's
all
a
of
reason they
sudden-
were the #1 defensive team in the league.
So now you take Anthony Edwards, and he's taking on the task of shutting down the best player, right? So all of a sudden, Jamal Murray is not Jamal Murray, and he's not going to be hitting any game-winning
That's
shots.
Edwards, and that's McDaniels.
Right?
McDaniels deserves a lot of credit for that too, as well.
Yeah,
they
but-
have multiple bodies they can throw at him. To your point,
Exactly,
Yes.
right? So if Ant-Man is going to take away Murray, right? So now you just got Jokic and
Sure.
everyone else, and those other tall, lanky players are going to be able to shut him down, right? So they don't
Absolutely.
have. And here's what's scary about Game 3 right now.
Sure.
Denver's secondary players don't play very well on the road.
I know.
They play
Most
extremely
road players
well
don't.
at home.
Yeah.
So I think Gordon is going to crap the bed. I don't think we're going to see Caldwell Pope. This might be another 20-plus point blowout.
Wow. So we're going to somewhat disagree here.
Ooh.
Here's what I'm going to say. I have to give Denver the respect of a defending NBA champion.
Nah, that's out the window. That's out
here's
the
all I'm
window.
gonna say.
Listen,
This is all I'm going to say.
your eyes gotta. You
I'm not
gotta.
gonna
You gotta
go-
believe what your eyes are telling you.
I have to believe that Denver has some pride. I think they come out swinging and they play the most physical game that you have seen.
So
I think they get it
when
done.
Minnesota slaps them around, what
Wait,
you
are
gonna
they
say?
Tonight or tomorrow?
There's tomorrow.
Tomorrow. I think Denver finds a way and they get it done.
If
do.
Minnesota comes out and slap them around and
Sure.
beat them by 15, what you gonna say then?
So,
What you gonna say then?
I love that you bring that up because here's what I'm going to say. Let's say the Nuggets lose in 4 to 5 games.
No. I'm talking about Game 3. Don't jump ahead. Game 3, Minnesota comes out.
But what do you want me to say?
Whoop 'em
down
by
3-0.
15.
They're going to lose the series then.
But what does that say about Denver?
Well, again, that's what I'm trying to kind of lead you to. Okay, so if they lose game 3, series is over, right? Just a matter of whether it ends in 4 or 5 games, correct? So I would ask you then, did we somewhat jump the wagon with this Denver team and anointing them and Jokic and how great they are in their grand scheme of things? Did they just have a heck of a run last year? That's the question I would sit there and kind of ask you at the same time as well. Like, what does this say about Denver overall and Jokic in the grand scheme?
Listen,
of
I
things?
do think the Western Conference is 100% about matchups, in my belief, when it comes to the playoffs.
Because it's so deep.
Because I felt
I wholeheartedly agree.
if Denver played the Warriors last year,
Yep.
I don't think Denver would have won the championship.
Okay.
This year,
as the
OKC
style
ended
of
up
play.
playing the Pelicans and breezed through round 1. If they played the Lakers, things would look real different right now.
Okay.
Right? I'd be interested to see what the Timberwolves and the
matchups.
Lakers
It is
would look like
matchups.
right now, right? So I really think matchups play a big role. So I'm not going to say anything like the Denver Nuggets are overrated or anything like that.
Sure.
But I don't think they're the dynasty that we thought.
We were
that
kind of
was
just
building.
anointing them. They were going to win this
Right.
title. They were going to more or less. And I'm guilty of it as much as anybody. I thought they were just going to. I didn't see a team beating them this year.
If they retool, right? If they retool
And they
next
lost
year,
depth,
I
too.
think they
They
lost a
did.
ton of
Losing
depth.
Bruce Brown was big. Again, that was a
But
big
here's the
loss.
thing: Gordon is good for LeBron. That's it. He can't give you
Well,
20
this
a
is a
game.
different
He's
series.
struggling to give you 16 a game.
I agree with you too because he functions so well when he can play in almost that kind of bigger point forward type of center type role, especially when Jokic goes off the court. That's not working in this series because they're bigger than him.
Yeah.
So he can't have, and they're just as that like Reed and Karl Anthony Towns can play with Aaron Gordon. They're bigger than him, and they are. The athleticism is basically comparable on both sides, and they have great. Well, especially Karl Anthony Towns, they have a greater skill set. But what I would say is, I think it points to all of us maybe anointing the Nuggets too soon, and then it kind of goes to let's wrap up really quick with this MVP talk. So what does it say? Like Jokic got the MVP again this year. Last year he got it. I think Denver actually finished with the best record.
No, last year Embiid got it.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Embiid
So
did get
listen, I think I know where you're going. I think this year was a makeup for Embiid getting it last year because there's no reason why SGA shouldn't have won it. They are the youngest team. The amount of points that he scored, number one seed in the West. SGA should have gotten it. I think this was just a makeup for last year, and I think the voters regret it now.
Yeah, Shaq even said it right to Jokic that he thought SGA should have the MVP. Personally, I thought it should have been either SGA or Luka, though I still think Jokic obviously had a very good season. Any one of those guys was more than deserving. But I will say that this has to slow down a little bit of the all-time talk with the Jokic.
100%.
But that is all the time we have for segment number 1. But don't go anywhere. We'll be right back to Run It Back on segment number 2. What is up, everybody? I am your host, Shane Mallory. Welcome to segment 2 Run It Back podcast with my co-host, Mr. DaCosta. All right, and we are going to wrap up our basketball talk, talking about these 2 other playoff series. But beautiful people, you know what I'm going to say. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. 5-star reviews come much appreciated. Hey, and if you like us that much, click that little bell link, all right, in the icon. You'll get a alert, okay, for any time one of our video drops. But we stay on the Western Conference this time. We finished with the first of the Western Conference series that are going on right now, conference semis. Now we go to the other one, the Mavericks versus the Thunder. Okay, they've played one game already. The Thunder absolutely blew the doors off the Mavs in that game, especially late. Competitive, I would say, until about midway through the third quarter, and then OKC really just started to pull away. My biggest takeaway, first of all, I'm going to start this segment off with an apology to 2 of the young teams right now. That is the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Listen, regardless of however your guys' seasons finish, I doubted how hungry both of you young teams were. I'm a big guy that believes in you kind of take these steps, and gradually get there. And again, these series are all still early. I mean, Minnesota and Denver looks a little bit more teetering on the brink of a whooping. We'll see what happens in game 2 with OKC and Dallas. But I'm usually a guy, you go in steps and phases to kind of climb the mountaintops, especially as a younger player. OKC, very limited in their playoff experience outside of SGA, and I think one other player on their roster from a couple years ago. Oh, and the guy they brought in too as well. Why am I drawing a blank? The small forward that they brought in late at the trade deadline. He was on the boat. Gordon Hayward. Gotcha. Gordon Hayward, okay. So they limited playoff experience overall, but obviously that does not seem to matter right now. They ran through their first series, and they just ran through the Mavericks in game 1. So obviously it does not seem like the scene or lack of experience is too much for them. Same with Minnesota.
I'm gonna stay true. Right, I
still got Dallas in the series.
I think Dallas is going to win this series. I don't think OKC is a true contender, even though, right, they looking good, right? But the truth matters, right? And the Pelicans.
What makes you a true contender, though? Making the Final Four.
The Pelicans were hobbled, right? You're right. No Zion, right?
Yep. But that's a part of this whole thing too, right? The last man standing.
No, listen, 100%, right? You can only beat the people that are in front of you, right? Now Luka has got a little knee issue. He wasn't quite the same in game 1, right? Let's see what happens in the series. So it is looking as if they should beat Dallas, but I think the experience of Kyrie and Luka and the length. And here's the other thing, right? If you watch that game 1, PJ Washington got in foul trouble early.
Yes,
SGA lived at the free throw line.
He did.
I'm just curious to see what happens if the refs don't give SGA those calls when he's initiating the contact.
Yeah, he's very good at that, though. That's kind of just his
game, in the regular season, that's the case. If that was going on in the Knicks series, he wouldn't be getting those calls, right? So just to set the stage.
Yeah.
If they're playing Minnesota, Anthony Edwards is about to shut that down. So it's just interesting to see where you have a Luka that isn't quite 100%, doesn't always give the same level of defensive intensity.
Sure.
So it's just interesting to see what happens, but I still don't believe Oklahoma is true contenders.
So what I'll say about the series, and just watching game 1, to me, it's pretty clear who the more talented / athletic team is. It's clearly OKC. They're younger, they are faster, they have good length, okay?
I could slightly disagree, though, after bringing in that trade,
They're not long at the front line, but they're long in their backcourt.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
so
fine.
all right. So
There you
we'll
because
even
the
it out
front
more
line
fair.
of Dallas.
Because you have Chet, right? Obviously,
That's
who is
it.
very long, but that's it.
That's
I
it,
agree with
right?
you. Outside of that,
Versus you
correct.
look at Dallas, right? They got
There's a couple
PJ
more.
Washington,
PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford. They have some big dudes. Sure.
Exactly.
So I do think OKC is the faster, a little bit more athletic, a little bit longer team, like positionally. But I do think Dallas has a little bit more power and beef to their lineup. The one thing I will say about this series, though, too, is, again, I'm not jumping anywhere. I want to see game 2. I'm still taking Dallas in the series. But if Luka is not 100%, the onus is that much more, not only on Kyrie, but as Shaq refers to them, the others or the role players, to really step up in their roles and perform. Because if Luka is not at 100%, here's the thing. OKC has multiple bodies that they can throw at him. SGA can actually guard him here and there because he's extremely long for a point guard. You also have a guy like Jalen Williams, but also the guy that I'm thinking about is my man Lou Dort, who I've been talking about all year.
Listen. Hold on. Time out.
Frustrating.
Time out. I gotta say this, man. Yo, this Lou Dort look legit, man. I gotta give it to you.
I've been talking about him all year.
I gotta give it to you,
That's
man.
That's a guy you don't want to go up against in the playoffs.
He's like the TJ McCollum dude, you know what I mean? Like annoying.
All
right?
due respect to him, though, he's better.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, he's
100%.
better.
No, 100%.
Physically a little
Respect.
bit, yeah.
Like, I use the Lou Dort.
Yeah, you're like, whatever.
Yeah,
And you
whatever,
watch him,
right?
and you're like,
all
oh.
right, you know, brother got a little game, you know?
does,
So,
man.
all right, I gotta give it to you.
That's a guy as a guard you do not want to play in a series because that guy, that's his job. He is there to bother
Wear you out.
to wear you out, to make you dribble up and down the floor. He's going to get under you. He gets over screens. Like, that guy is not going to leave your side while he's on the court. And that's a tough thing that Luka's going to have to deal with throughout the series. Now, Luka is a master of savvy and strategy and craftiness on the court. He will bring pick and rolls. I'm interested to see the adjustments in this game, too.
Now, let the record
Dallas
show.
in game 2,
Now, let the record show, right? Dallas under Jason Kidd does not win game 1. I think they're like 0-6
It's
or
almost
something
like
like
their
that.
feel out. What are you giving us?
They're like
Yeah.
old school LeBron, right?
Sure.
Where he would always not, you know, he'd
It's the
feel it
feel-out
out.
game. It's the
Exactly.
feel-out
So I'm
game.
interested, really interested to see what happened in game 2.
I like the LeBron reference there, too.
You know, OKC, like I said, SGA got a lot of calls.
Yep.
I think he had like 12 or 14 free throws,
Okay.
right? And so I'm interested to see if that holds up. I don't believe
Home
that's going to
team,
hold
you
up,
know, too. You know,
right?
the home
And
team aspect.
PJ Washington is not going to be in trouble again. Foul trouble again. Tim Hardaway Jr., right? Only had 2 points in game 1.
Sure.
I expect him to step up. He's averaging 15 points in the 15 points in the playoffs. So if all of a sudden you get your 14 points from Tim Hardaway Jr., you get your 15 points from PJ Washington, all of a sudden now it's a real close game.
Sure, absolutely.
Right?
Again, you have to. But what I'm saying is, we have to give OKC the respect enough. These guys are going to have to step up and perform. OKC is not just going to give it to you because you're
Let me say this, right? Let me say this. Even though I don't believe they're a true contender, that team's got heart and they're fearless, right? So ultimately, to your point, they're not afraid of the moment, but they are learning on the fly.
Sure.
So it's interesting to see when they are challenged. They're 5-0 in the
You
playoffs
wanna
right
see
now.
them hit
How are
adversity.
they going to react?
Yes.
You know, after they lose a game. So listen,
thing with
I
Minnesota.
would say this: if they come out and win this series, right? Depending on what they do against Minnesota in the conference finals, I would change my opinion.
Well, again, if they're there, then they're in the Final Four. That's what I was kind of trying to hint / ask you earlier when you were saying.
Yeah,
you're
like
not
I
a
said,
contender.
matchups matter.
But so what constitutes though,
How
being
you
a
win
contender?
matters. How you win
Okay.
matters. You look at the Knicks right
When
now,
we look at
right
top
there, winning
8,
close
top
game.
4, like if you're in the top 4 remaining teams, you make it to the conference finals. Would that put you in the category of a contender?
Again, how you got there matter, right? If you beat a bunch of hobbled teams, right? Like,
But
if
that's
all
part of this
of
thing.
a sudden
Look at
Jalen
the Knicks. The
Brunson,
Knicks are hobbled,
if
but they're
all
still
of a
winning,
sudden
right?
Jalen Brunson goes down and then the Pacers come and win the series, nobody's gonna have a ton of respect for the Pacers because they beat a broken down Knicks team without a Jalen Brunson, right? Again, everyone forgets this, right?
Don't go with that Philly mentality though,
Listen.
because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to explain away their loss through like injuries.
No,
and
we're
Embiid.
again. if we lose Jalen Brunson, like the Pacers are going to win this series, right? I can
totally
say that
agree.
with confidence, right?
They could still win it possibly without OG too. Like we don't know yet.
I do believe they will win without OG, right?
I agree.
But what I'm saying is, right, on the OKC side, right, they have not faced adversity yet,
Fair.
right? They have not, had a 6-game, playoff series. They're still the youngest team.
Yep.
So when they get punched in the mouth, how are they going to react? When they don't get all the calls, right, how are they going to react? Are those same role players going to hit those same threes, right, on the road? All of these things matter. But what I will say is they play defense. They seem fearless, right? And they're playing with a lot of confidence, right?
A young, hungry team with nothing to lose.
And they're playing that way.
It's a dangerous thing to play. And it's interesting the way these playoffs are breaking down right now. I think guys like you and I think we're just used to the playoffs going a certain way and having somewhat of a level of predictability. All of a sudden, these young players are more ready to win now than they ever have been. And it's kind of interesting. I'm really curious to see how these series do play out. I'm still taking Dallas, okay? But game 2, how that game goes. I think I had Dallas originally in 6. I'm going to stick with that for now.
Okay.
But obviously, if they go down 0-2, I mean, then
change things a little bit.
You got to reassess. You really got to reassess. Again, I'll always stand by. It's not a series until one team wins on the opposing team's floor. That's what I always wait for. Okay. So I think it's going to be a great series. I can't wait to get home and watch that game tonight, too. On the other side, the last series we'll talk about, not as exciting again. And I'm not trying to throw any shade toward the Cavs. First of all, hats off to the Cavs moving on in the first round. They lost, obviously, a tough first-round series last year to our New York Knicks. It looked like they were going to struggle in that game. Okay, the Magic were beating them up in that game 7.
That's their first series win without a LeBron.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's huge. Just getting over the hump right there. It was a tough, hard-fought series. They really gritted and grinded their way to a hard comeback victory in that game 7. Shout out to them. Watching them play Boston, I just think it's a really bad matchup for them. I just don't think they have the necessary defensive depth and size to kind of combat Jaylen Brown.
They're missing Jared Allen, right? So that's a big loss.
Yeah.
And
all they have is Mobley, and he's tall, but he's very skinny.
Yeah, and what I'm starting to see is
they're not a physical team.
The Celtics are forcing teams to play like them. Right, so Miami and now the Cavaliers, they're shooting so many 3-point attempts. Right, and this is where I hate analytics, right? Because there's nothing wrong with a mid-range shot. Right, and a lot of NBA players shoot that at a better clip than a 3-pointer, even though you get the extra point for the 3. So I think, if the Cavs keep it close, they got to put the pressure on the Celtics. Right, But ultimately, the Celtics look too good. It doesn't look like the game plan for the Cavs are going to be highly successful. They don't play well on the road. So
I just don't think they have the athleticism and power/size combo to really play with Boston.
I agree. I agree. Boston looks like they got a clear path to the Western Conference Final.
Yeah. So now here's what I will say though: is I think Boston wins this series. I'm going to say I'll give the Cavs 1 game. I'll say Boston wins in 5. Here's my question though:
I think it's a sweep.
You think it's a sweep?
I think it's a sweep.
Jason Tatum, struggling right now, man. He's struggling. I think he's shooting just under 41% from the field right now. He's shooting 25% from behind the 3-point line. This is something that I kept talking about with Boston when it comes to how they perform in the regular season, but Tatum in general. Tatum's game is way too reliant on difficult shot making. Okay, it's the playoffs. Defense tightens up. It gets a lot more physical. Refs tend to swallow the whistle. Well, if you're going to shoot contested threes, it's one thing like when you're playing a game here and a game there. Now it's a series where all the teams are literally just preparing and identifying you. He's going to get guarded significantly harder because the Cavs come into that series going, we can't let Jason Tatum just go off.
But the problem is, I think, again, I'm going to go back to coaching, right? Like, where are the offensive schemes, right? Where's the give and go, the pick and roll, right? Where are the backdoor cuts, right? Tatum is a skilled enough player that he could play off ball. He could play on ball.
Should be going to the hoop more, man.
I agree, right?
Big, long, strong dude.
Here's the thing. They should be funneling the offense through him. It's almost like I would want him to see him run point, right? Or play him out of
from a half-court set, get him the ball and then.
Right, get him the ball early. Or, to me, play him out of the triangle system, right? I think those are the 2 systems that he could thrive, right? Put him in the low post, have, one guy on the in the corner, one guy on the wing, and play it off that way so he can play with his back to the basket.
Sure.
But I think it's coaching right now. Plus, their style of basketball is that they want to shoot 53s a game, right? And they're gonna live and die with the three. And I think when they come up to a strong defensive team, and I'm going to say the Knicks, I'm going to say a Minnesota, I'm going to say,
multiple opponents out west. Multiple.
Almost every, I even give OKC some credit, right? Because they don't have the length, but they play with the effort defensively, right?
They're almost mirror images of each other in some respect when you look at OKC.
That I agree.
Younger,
No, 100%.
Especially when you put in Porzingis.
That is a great comparison. OKC and the Thunder are built the exact. OKC and the Celtics are built the same way, 100%. So that's where I had to stop and think. But they both don't have the big men.
That's it.
That's it.
Horford.
That's it, right?
But they are built very similar. Both have great backcourts. All right. They have good wing players too as well, and then they have obviously a big dude who can stretch the floor.
But you see, for example, the other team I was missing is the Nuggets. If the Celtics played the Nuggets right now, I think Aaron Gordon fits well, right? So
I totally
to me,
agree.
The Celtics don't
they
match
have
up.
a hard time guarding Jokic. He'll back Porzingis right down under the hoop and get him in
They
foul
have no
trouble
answer
that
for
whole
him,
series. Yep.
and they're going to be able to guard against the three. So, I think again, it goes back to matchup. When the Celtics face a strong defensive team, I want to see how they're going to react. Because you take away the three, what do they have?
Yeah, or just a team with a little bit more physical body and presence too as well. No, I like it. It's a good point. Going back to the Tatum thing, I question two things. I wonder if this team can win if Tatum continues to struggle like this. I tend to lean on the side of no, they can't.
They're going to be able to get past this series.
Yes, totally agree. And they might be able to make it even to the finals just because of their talent, all right? And I think it's really going to depend on who the Knicks have available to them in a series like that.
If OG comes back,
I give the Knicks a shot. Absolutely. I think the Knicks have more
strong
than a shot
puncher's
to go
chance.
and win that chance. Yeah. Again, the Celtics the favorite? Absolutely. And they should be. Okay.
Yes.
They dominated the regular season all year. But I give the Knicks more than a puncher's chance if OG can in fact play in that
and listen,
series.
hypothetically, if the Knicks were able to go through Philly, go through the Pacers, and beat the Celtics to go to the NBA Finals.
People got to stop saying that they stink.
This might
Give
be
the Knicks
destiny.
some respect, man. It's been tough for us New York fans last couple of years. All of a sudden now we got the Knicks up 2-0, the Rangers up 2-0. Things are nice now for New York sports. So it's just like,
hey,
we got our
one game at a
flowers
time.
too.
One game at a
One
time.
game
One
at a
game at a
time.
time.
I think the Rangers
Let's
are
not jump
actually on
ahead.
tonight, too,
So one game at a time. New York. Like we're not, listen, we ain't gonna be Cowboy fans. Not saying we're gonna win it all, right? But
I was saying that's everybody in Philly. I said it's one game.
One game at a time.
It's one game.
And we got some
Can't
injured
count the
guys
kitchens before they hatch.
There you go.
No, they've been dealing with the injuries all year too. I think that's what I like so much about this team. But I'll say this too in regards to Boston. Everything that I want Tatum to be and improve upon as a player, you know who's in fact actually done that? Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown is really emerging this year, and all of a sudden I start to sit here and wonder, Tatum might be the talent, but Brown to me right now is kind of the guy. He is the straw that stirs that drink over there. He takes it to the hoop very aggressively. He's a good defender, and he just seems to have that leadership / alpha male mentality. He's not afraid to just say, give me the ball, I'm going to go after people.
I think if they were to separate, you're going to see the best of both of them, right? I don't think they can though,
just because there's so much money tied up in both of them for the foreseeable future.
Tatum is due for a contract extension this offseason. And next season he'd be a free agent. Yeah. But now you can't pay two guards over $30 million, right? Like that's a lot
/ wing.
That's a lot of money tied up in two positions. You just gave Holiday a big contract. You gave Porzingis a contract. Sure. They can't afford to keep everyone.
Yeah, no, listen, it will be interesting. All right. But that series, I think, is going to be the least competitive of these remaining playoff series.
And listen, as you talk about competitiveness, right, and athleticism, right, there was a big old debate between NBA and football players, right?
Yeah. So I actually have the quote right here. This stirred up so much talk across the news.
Austin Rivers?
Austin Rivers, the son of Doc Rivers. His exact quote was, he could take 30 NBA players and work them seamlessly into the NFL. You cannot take 30 NFL players and put them in the NBA. I was fascinated by this topic of conversation, fascinated by the fact that he said it so confidently. I watched a ton of different shows. Again, I have many feelings about this. I just think it opens up a conversation for so many different directions. But I'll at least start with you. I'll leave the floor to you. What do you think about this?
I think this is an outrageous comment, right? Ultimately, right,
Maybe you should
basketball.
preface this with you are a college football player.
Listen,
So it's gonna be the brotherhood thing, you
hold
know?
on. No, listen, I love basketball.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yo, I was
I
supposed
love them both.
Listen, I never had a growth spurt. I was supposed to be 6'6", okay? You know,
Basketball
I'm a
is
little
my
hurt.
first love, so I'm
my
with
first
you.
love. My first love, right?
Now that I'm having to get these instead because I'm 5'8". That's all I could do.
I really grew to love football, but like I said, I like to be a very fair individual, right?
Sure.
And in terms of being a fair individual, you cannot take 30 basketball players and put them to play football, right? So listen, you know what? Let's spin this topic. Let's start this in segment 3, right? Production is letting us know we got to wrap it up. So let's just stop right there.
So
let's not even get into it. We'll table this
the combo, guys,
for segment 3.
The Austin Rivers debate. In
Production
segment
is
3.
giving us the
right.
wrap it up.
But listen, we will be right back to run it back on segment number 3. What is up, everybody? I am your host, Shane Mallory, joined, of course, by my co-host, Ricky DaCosta. And this is segment number 3, okay, the final segment of Run It Back for this week's edition. Again, beautiful people, you already know what I'm going to say. Like, comment, and subscribe. Please, we're looking for those 5-star reviews. And if you like us that much, click that little bell icon to get a little alert or a ding every time one of our videos drops. But we had prefaced the topic that we're going to talk about in the previous segment. Had some technical
NBA
difficulties,
versus
right? So we're doing a
NFL.
little
You
NBA
know?
versus NFL. I think this, like I said, I think this conversation could go many ways. But again, Austin Rivers more or less said that I could take 30 NBA players right now and seamlessly transition them into the NFL. I could not, or he said you could not do that with 30 NFL players into the NBA. I'm gonna pass the buck over to you first. I'll kind of just respond
It's
periodically.
just outrageous altogether, right? let's say this, right? Basketball has tremendous skill, right? Tremendous skill handling the ball, dribbling, so on and so forth.
It requires
right?
more overall skills. I got you.
But pure athleticism, like basketball players don't even compete. Right? Don't even compete when it comes to NFL players, right? So, let's just talk about this for a second, right? Like, let's not even talk about the little dudes, right? Let's talk about the big dudes. Let's talk about the offensive and defensive line, right? You're telling me Myles Garrett can't play ball? You're telling me Myles Garrett can't play basketball?
Definitely could.
Right?
Garrett definitely
yeah, Myles Garrett, right?
He definitely could.
You see what I'm saying,
No
right?
doubt.
So there was this basketball player.
There's only one guy you named.
Hold on.
Okay.
I got you.
Okay.
There was this guy. They call him Glenn Big Baby Davis.
Sure.
Right? You remember him?
Yeah, I remember
He was
Big
like
Baby.
he was like 6'8",
6'8", 6'9".
right? Something like that.
He was
Like
like a shorter Shaq.
300,
Yeah.
right? Something like that.
Yeah, in the 300 range, maybe 290.
And then you just brought up Shaq, but Shaq was like 7 feet and 300, right?
350 by the time.
350 is in a lot of Happy Meals,
He was
right?
big, he was
you
big.
realize, in essence, you put those two players together, that is like almost every offensive tackle, right? Now, yes, we do have some bigger, hunky boys, you know what I mean? But,
I don't even know if tackles are 350, especially now.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
they're like
yeah.
330,
I got you.
320, 315, right?
It's
First
only
of all,
300 plus.
and again, they're like 15% body fat at that much weight, right? So
Some of them, yeah,
right.
yeah.
So you look at a
Especially
Tunsil,
elite ones,
right?
yeah.
You look at a Tunsil, right? Like you
Tunsil,
can't tell
sure.
me he can't play ball, right? So the one place I'll give you are those guards and centers because they're supposed to be a little shorter and stockier and fatter, but like they're super athletic. You see what I'm saying, right? And
For
then
that size, absolutely. Absolutely.
so then you think about like a Von Miller and his speed,
Sure.
right? And his athleticism, right? Now, granted, a couple knee injuries, but before the knee injuries, you couldn't tell me like he ain't got game, right?
Sure.
Go back in the day, we touched upon this, Julius Peppers,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so
He's a little different, obviously, just because he
played basketball.
both,
He
so,
played,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But like, understand, like that's the mold of a defensive end, right? 6'6", right? 260,
Sure.
right? Like there's so many of those. And then you got the smaller ones like a Micah Parsons that are super athletic. He was going up against a sumo wrestler the other day in his training.
Yeah, do you know that sumo wrestler was 17 years old, right?
Does it matter? You see how big
That's
that
gotta
boy
matter
was?
a little bit, though,
You
right?
see how big? Listen, you couldn't tell me he wasn't 40.
That first
couldn't
one,
tell
man,
me he
just
wasn't
stepped up,
40.
stood Micah up like a brick wall, man. Micah was like, damn.
But like my point is, right? Okay, so like from you put any defensive tackle, offensive tackle in the post, right? Those are baby Shaqs you got to play against, right?
I'm glad that you're bringing this up.
telling me, Chet Holmgren is gonna body him up, right?
Sure.
You're telling me, Porzingis is gonna stop him, right? Come on, like no, not at all. The football players are an athletic Kendrick Perkins,
Yeah.
right? So at the end of the day, and mind you, just remember this, ladies and gentlemen, I've just been talking about the
little bit of an
offensive
outdated archetype, but go
and
on.
defensive. Here's the thing, like my point is they're bigger, right?
I got you.
Listen, first of all, Jokic barely can run. Okay? Jokic barely can run. So
And he's 270, 280.
so what are we saying?
But I think you're kind of hurting your case.
How am I
though, with
hurting
the
my
lineman.
argument?
Okay, so
First of all, those offensive defensive linemen are more athletic than Jokic, right? So you put them, those 6'6", 6'7", 6'8" guys down
again,
in the
when
post.
you say they're more athletic, though, like what do you mean?
More
exactly?
explosive,
Okay.
stronger. The faster is debatable, right?
Here's my ask to you, because you just, I think, hit on a critical point that I think, again, I'm not taking one side or the other, for the record. Basketball is my first love, but I played football.
Go ahead. Because I know you're about to say something outrageous.
I didn't play basketball competitively. No, I think something, you just hit it. Jokic has trouble running. Jokic is what, about like 280, maybe 290 range? Okay. So you're talking about like these interior linemen.
I know where you're going. Go ahead.
You're going to take them 300 plus pounds, and you're gonna run them back and forth up and down.
These
the
dudes run a 4.5. These dudes run a 4.5. Jokic can't run a 5.
But again, okay.
What are we saying?
Again, there's very rare interior linemen that are running 4.5s on
Okay,
either side.
what about the defensive ends? Come on, you're just going to this.
Okay.
Come on,
But
you know the deep tackles are the big boys.
But here's what I want to talk about.
But you're telling me Aaron Donald can't run a 4.5?
You're talking about the 300-pounders. You just alluded to Jokic struggling running. So if Jokic struggles that much running,
he's not athletic though.
But you think a 300-pounder is going to be able to do it any better than Jokic is over the course of the game?
100%.
That's where
100%.
That's where I somewhat disagree, respectfully, because all I'm sitting here is that's way more weight to carry in a sport where, again, I'm not trying to criticize football, but when you look at football compared to basketball, the one thing I'll say is, now I'm not going into mental toughness because there's a whole other physical.
There's
side.
not even a question there.
Side
right?
Where you can go into this.
There
argument.
might be less than 10 NBA players that have true mental toughness.
The NBA is you have to have that height combined with the speed to be able to change direction at a given notice and fly back and forth in a smaller and more confined area. That's where I think some of the football players, the bigger guys, would tremendously struggle. Now, you're going to what you're talking about. Defensive ends, linebackers, wide receivers.
No, I haven't went there yet. No. I'm out.
That's all I'm saying.
I have
Those guys,
I have
different story.
intentionally left all of those skill players
Well, you already brought
out,
up Myles Garrett.
right? But
so he's a defensive end.
So yeah, but no, I'm saying I left out the linebackers.
Yep.
I left out the DBs. I left out the wide receivers. I left out the running backs.
I'm just saying the
And
interior
I
part
left
is
out
the biggest
tight ends.
struggle.
Because listen, you telling me Travis Kelce can't ball?
Maybe.
Right? Come on.
Maybe.
Listen, you telling me Travis Kelce can't ball?
Maybe.
Right? Listen.
Maybe.
Look, at the end of the day, right? Here's the true comparison, right? Because, I bring up a Kendrick Perkins for size and power, right? I bring up a Shaq, right, that had some speed,
Sure.
but he had a lot of height and he played a big man game.
Yeah.
But what I see in today's comparison is a Zion Williams, right? Like, to me, that is Zion Williamson. That is who football players would be that play in the trenches, right? Especially on the defensive side, right? Those defensive ends are going to be super athletic, super explosive, right? They're built in the, Zion mode, the Charles Barkley mode, where they're going to dominate the interior and you're not going to move them. So the only thing you can do on the basketball court is try to beat them with speed, because you're not going to beat them with power and you're not going to want to see them in the lane, right? So you're going to have to try to beat them with speed. But now you're talking about defensive players playing defense. It doesn't matter what sport it is. A defensive player go play defense, right? So that's all I'm saying. And this argument is just with the big boys, right? First of all, linebackers.
But they're a part of football.
Linebackers are some of the most athletic people in the world.
Totally agree.
Because they have to, mess with those 300-pounders.
Sure.
And they got to keep up with those 5'7",
Running backs.
180.
And sometimes covering tight ends and receivers.
I'm talking about the slot guys,
got
right? You know, so at the end of the day, like, to me, football transitions to basketball so much easier. Charles Barkley said he
certain
attempted
positions would transition.
most positions.
The lineman would not. The big lineman would not.
The fat, slow ones would struggle. Again, where I give it to basketball, right, is that basketball is a game of endurance.
Yeah.
Right? So all the football players would need to do is increase their conditioning, change their conditioning.
Sure.
Football is made up of bursts, right? And multiple
Much shorter bursts
3
with
to
a lot
5
more rest.
seconds. Yes, with rest, but again, because of the physical element, that takes an additional toll.
Oh, I got you.
Right?
No one's arguing.
NBA players struggling with a hand check, with a bump in the lane, right? You put true football players out there that you're going to let them play physical in the playoffs? Come on. Like, what are we really talking
Well, again,
about?
I think the translation is just to the game period. So we're not talking about it in a said time frame, meaning it's the playoffs or the championship.
Sure, fine.
It's just
again,
it's just
from a skill,
apple to apple.
Listen, from a skill, the two things that basketball players have the initial lead on is the skill of dribbling,
Sure.
right? And then the endurance factor. Other than that,
It's just a different type of endurance.
Football players can keep up with anything. And now, if I include the DBs and I include the wide receivers and I'm going to include most tight ends, right? They are going. The endurance thing is out the window. So then the question is, can they dribble?
So again, there's two things that are working against both sides. I'll sit here and state right now, from a mental toughness standpoint, no question to me which sport is harder. It's football because of the physical toll and grind that it can take on the body. So let's just preface this by saying the first thing we have to sit there and say is basketball is an inherently less physical sport. Agreed?
Wait. Can I also just stop you right there? Because earlier you brought up Jason Tatum.
Sure.
And didn't you say Jason Tatum started to struggle in the playoffs because they started to play him tougher?
Yeah, sure.
What do you think football players would do?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, listen, I'm not saying, but again, this is going to a.
But my point
I get what
is,
you're
right,
saying.
in this NBA, right, it's about space.
But
and
the
pace,
rules aren't going to change
right?
just because a football player is
No,
coming.
I got you. No, exactly. That's my point, right?
Yeah.
So, but that betters my argument because this generation of basketball players do not want to play a physical brand of basketball.
I got you, but
right?
just because a football player.
But the old school basketball players,
Yeah.
I think would then it's a little different.
And listen, I understand you, but again, just because football players play a more physical game, that doesn't all of a sudden translate to they're just going to go into the NBA and be able to just throw around their physicality. There's rules and it's a different style
How
of
many
game.
people want to see LeBron coming down the lane? 6'7", 260, 11% body fat. What do you think football players would be?
Not 6'7".
Sure, they're 6'5".
I think that's the one. I think that's the. But I think that's the
lane.
one big part that you're kind of leaving out. 6'5", 260. So what position is he playing in the NBA? Every dude in there is freaking tall and long as hell. It's a different body type and archetype.
Agreed.
Here's what I'm trying to say. Football, mentally tougher. I disagreed with your earlier premise, though, in that I think the NBA, in terms of pure skill and overall athleticism, I think the NBA requires slightly more.
No, not
because,
that. I'll say
because of the.
I'll give you skill, not
Hold
that
on.
athleticism.
But it's absolutely athleticism because look at the build of all NBA players compared to the build of
Are
some
you just
NFL
counting
players.
height as athleticism?
No, I'm talking about their overall makeup and build. Height, length, ability to change direction.
What
and
can Kevin Durant
sprint the
do
court.
on the football field?
Sprint the court. I'm not saying Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant might be the one guy that would struggle. So would
The
Wemby.
Wemby, Chet Holmgren, what's the forward from the Nets, right? That got
Ben
traded from the
Simmons.
Suns. No. Oh my God. The forward, he played for the Suns. He was in the Kevin Durant trade. And
Mikal Bridges?
Bridges,
Okay.
right? Like that's the NBA body.
That's one, sure.
That's the main type of NBA. He's one of the most prestigious players that they want to get because he's so versatile. But what can he really do on the football field?
I mean, I wouldn't put Mikal Bridges in the pantheon of the athletes in the NBA, though.
To me, what's his name? Devontae Smith from the Eagles.
Yep.
Right? To me, that is an NBA body on the football field. Right? But that's it.
Sure.
Like, that's who they would be. Now, that Slim Grieper right there, his toughness.
You said who? Devontae Smith?
Devontae Smith.
I would
from
take
Eagles.
A.J. Brown before Smith just because he's a lot
That's
bigger.
not what basketball players look like. That's not what basketball players would
They
look
don't
like.
look like
on a football
Devontae
field.
Smith either. Devontae
Yes, they
Smith.
do.
No, they don't. Devontae Smith isn't even 6 feet.
Yo, how many basketball players are over 215 pounds?
Devontae Smith is not even 6 feet tall. He'd be one of the smallest basketball players in the NBA right now.
That again, but that body type, right? He's
As in, you're saying leaner?
leaner,
Okay.
lankier, right?
Okay.
He's got super long arms.
Sure.
He's got a crazy wingspan. That's why I drew that comparison. Yes, he's not 6'5" or 6'6".
Sure.
But like his long arms, right? His overall weight and size to me is an NBA body frame on the football field. Basketball players would not look like A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown hits the gym.
But there's actually a lot more basketball players nowadays that do look like A.J. Brown.
Like who?
LeBron, Paolo Banchero, all these point forwards that are bigger, physical, more
I give you that
athletically
one.
gifted
I give you that
archetypes.
one, and there's nobody else.
Aaron Gordon is that type of an archetype and body type too as well. He's not as jacked muscularly, but again, there's a lot more of these types of guys in the NBA. I'm not saying they're all built like NFL players. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm saying is some of the best players have a build, and I think it's why Austin Rivers is making the comment. For the record, let me just say this right now. I've already said and stated, I think football is the mentally tougher game. You have to be mentally tougher to play in football because of the physical grind, wear and toll on the body. But from a purely athleticism standpoint, I think football, the only place where football hurts in terms of just the translation of which side could play, you could take a ton of football players. No, I'm sorry, football players. You could take a bunch of NBA players. Now, granted, they have to have the mental makeup to be able to go and play football. But let's just say apples to apples. We're going to take, they're both professional athletes. So let's give them the mental toughness check on both sides saying, okay, these players are at least, we're going to pick them. They're mentally tough enough to go and play in the opposing sport. Is that fair if we just start the argument like that or the approach that way?
Listen,
I'm not going to sit because we can't even, what I'm saying is we can't even have the discussion if what we're saying is we're just going to accept that no NBA player is mentally tough enough to go and play in the NFL.
No, I'm not.
You know what I'm
no.
saying?
Yeah. I'm
so
not
that's
gonna
what
say
I'm trying to
zero.
say.
Yes. Okay,
so if
sure,
we do
great.
it like that, from that perspective,
even though I don't think there's many, I don't think 10% of them have the mental toughness.
The only place where I would say the NBA players have somewhat of the advantage is you kind of pointed this out. They don't necessarily have to go and play a specific. They don't have to go and play on the line. Find a specific position for them, like a LeBron, a Zion, a Paolo Banchero,
time out.
Anthony Edwards, a Russell Westbrook.
I have to say this.
Go ahead.
Other than wide receiver or tight end, what position can a basketball player play?
I think
they're not playing any defensive positions.
I think Russell Westbrook could play running back or safety, as I do think Anthony Edwards could play running back or safety as well. Russell Westbrook. I apologize. Westbrook
cannot play safety.
Seriously? You see the way that guy flies up and down the court? You're telling me he can't rage from side to side on a football field?
You think?
Yeah. I'm not talking about reading a defense or knowing all that.
Listen to me.
I'm just talking about the athleticism required.
You think Russell Westbrook can keep up with Tyreek Hill? Can keep up with Jalen Waddle?
Well, if he's playing a safety, he doesn't necessarily have to run stride for stride with Tyreek Hill.
Okay, you think Russell Wilson can
Russell
Westbrook can match up with Travis Kelce?
I mean, most safeties can't.
Cole Kmet?
Okay, so again, you just said.
What do you mean? So,
but you're targeting the best.
You just took away wide receivers, and now you want to take away tight ends.
I'm not taking away tight ends.
Who's he going to cover?
No.
Who's he supposed to cover?
I'm not taking away tight ends. What I'm saying is, you're saying Russell Westbrook can't play in the NFL just because he wouldn't be able to cover Travis Kelce. Who can cover Travis Kelce?
He can't cover.
The league's still trying to figure it out right now.
T.J. Hawkinson.
I don't know. I mean, he doesn't play football.
Sam Laporta.
Again, you're
that
naming
Iowa
some of the.
Body? You think Russell Westbrook?
Naming some of the top guys, though. There are some of the best safeties in the league can't cover these guys.
Oh my God!
But they can't. That's all I'm saying.
Cole Kmet. Can I pick Cole Kmet?
Sure.
Right? He's 6'6".
Do I know? Can I sit here and definitively say that Russell Westbrook could cover him? I don't know. My point is the athleticism required to play safety in the NFL. I do believe that Russell Westbrook possesses that athleticism. I do. Would he be a good safety is a whole different story. Does he possess the athleticism?
So just because he can run, Like, you think he could play
change
a
of
defensive
direction side to side. But we're going with the whole. We have to.
Wait.
We just have to approach this. But we
question?
just have to approach this from an athleticism perspective.
Because I was talking from a coverage standpoint.
Yeah, you're going to, because we can do that with the NBA too, right?
You think Russell Westbrook can tackle Saquon Barkley?
Sure. If you taught him how to tackle,
Jesus Christ.
if he learned how to tackle, yeah. Yes, Russell Westbrook is one of the most physical under 6'5" players in league history.
Yeah,
he
that
scores
is so disrespectful to Saquon Barkley.
I'm not trying to be disrespectful.
Okay, fine.
We're arguing the
fine.
pure athleticism standpoint. Does Russell Westbrook have the athleticism to
Derrick
play?
Henry?
What about him?
What about, you think
no, he's probably not. Most people can't tackle Derrick Henry.
You just want me to keep naming running backs?
You can go ahead and name them, sure.
Right. I'll even give you an old guy. Joe Mixon.
But I think
Joe Mixon, right? They got the same type of body.
But you're trying to approach it from a full minutia of the game, and I think
that's what it's
about.
Because
I'm not
football
trying.
Is more than running and jumping.
Austin Rivers is talking purely from and I'm trying to give him more the benefit of the doubt of what he's trying to say. What he is saying is the athleticism and the body types of the NBA.
No, he said it's about running
and
jumping.
They're already tall as hell. They can move side to side. They have similar athleticism to some of the positions in football. For example, wide receiver, safety.
No, but their short-term quickness does not compare to any football player. Short.
They can do it over and over again for the course of 4 quarters.
No,
all due respect to football players. Basketball requires a higher level of endurance, especially for the star players, because they get less breaks.
You want to give credit towards endurance, but you're not giving respect towards like short-term quickness and agility. That's
I
my
100%
point.
am. That's
like
what the NBA is.
Basketball players would not be able to stay in front of almost any football player.
What's bigger, a basketball court or a football field?
That's a good question.
It's very easy. A football field is larger than a basketball court.
Because width-wise, no, it's not. It's not. A basketball court is not 50 yards wide. So, yeah, football.
So football's I hear what you're saying about the change of direction, but what happens in the NBA is because it's on a smaller court, right? The change of direction can happen at a much quicker rate because you're on one side, bang, a ball bangs, and then quickly everybody has to now sprint quickly to another side. But if the ball's loose all over the place, you have guys changing one way, changing back the other way. The court is so short. With the NFL, yes, they might have to range from a longer standpoint, but they're also going to get a break in between that. In the NBA, that continuous back and forth could happen over the course of the whole quarter.
In the NBA, you got a ton of help. But when you're blitzing and it's man on man, you think name a player in the NBA that's going to be able to, I'll let you pick the wide receiver.
Sure.
That's going to guard a wide receiver one-on-one man coverage.
I don't know if a football player necessarily is going to translate to playing, an NBA player, I apologize, is going to translate to playing cornerback. But I do think there are several other positions that they could translate into play.
The one that I will give credit to because he has that body type, I think Zion, right? He has the body type and the explosiveness to definitely play football. That is the one that I will give you.
What about LeBron?
Right? Yes, LeBron can play.
LeBron was an all-state football player in high school. I think LeBron could play some football.
Yes, he can play wide receiver. He can play tight end, right? I'll give him those 2 hands down. But again, you pick the best. I take secondary guys. You be like, who can guard Travis Kelce?
Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards. He couldn't play ball. And I said Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook is not the best player in the NBA right now.
Listen, Jesus Christ.
Not even in the top 10.
You brought me down to Cole Kmet. Right, you brought me down to Cole Kmet. You didn't even let me have TJ Hockenson.
Because you're trying to boil it down to one simple matchup. And what I'm trying to say is
football is a game of matchup.
Across the position of football. Okay, but who's to say they couldn't just go and play receiver or tight end?
The point of this argument is that that's all they can play, wide receiver and tight end. They can't play any defensive position.
But if 30 of them can all play that position and 30 NFL players could not, then his point is kind of proven. It doesn't matter if they can't play all the positions. What matters is, could they play a position at a high enough level to be a professional?
What I would give you is probably Steph Curry would probably be the hardest guard for any football player because Steph Curry
You think Curry's going to be the guy who goes in as a receiver?
No. Opposite.
Okay, you're a football player covering.
Football
I
players
got you.
guarding
I
Steph
got you.
Curry and that offensive system, that would be the most difficult task they have.
Understood.
One-on-one with Anthony Edwards, KD, LeBron, like they'll be able to match up with them physically.
Who is the tallest NFL player that's just going to come in and like dominate the NBA? That's my only question. There's not a lot of tall, athletic dudes, but they are not going to be able to run up and down the court. Again, I go back. to the earlier point you made about. I made the earlier point about Jokic. You said Jokic struggles to run up and down the court
because he's not athletic.
Okay, so then
he's not athletic.
But you just said the bigger. You just said the bigger guys are the tackles.
90%.
They're going to be 300 pounds running up and down the court.
I can't even say that. Every football player is athletic. Every football player. The 350 guy that runs the 5'2"
This is
more
This is why
athletic.
I like not having a dog in the fight, because I remove my bias and I'm looking at it from a pure athleticism standpoint. And you cannot tell me that NFL offensive linemen...
You're counting height as athleticism.
That's a part of athleticism. Your size and overall build. That is a part of your athleticism.
I'm talking about explosiveness. I'm talking about short-term quickness.
Sure.
I'm talking about endurance.
Sure.
I'm talking about...
And almost every NBA player now has to have those sort of things. Now, the mental toughness and physicality...
do not have short-term quickness.
They 100% do. They play on a smaller court.
They do not.
They play on a smaller court. So they have to change direction faster.
Exactly. So if you're on a wider field,
you just said they don't have short-term quickness. If they play on a shorter court and the ball changes directions faster, then they have to have short-term quickness.
You're going front and back in football.
And
it's
side to side.
Oh, come on, no, listen. We're not going to go anywhere with this. What do you guys think? At the end of the day, my standpoint: football players are more athletic. They have more short-term quickness, and just about majority of football players can play basketball, but majority of basketball players cannot play any football position outside of tight end and wide receiver. Okay. That's my stance.
All right. So we'll get past that weird monologue that was just there. And here's my simple one. I think the NFL, I think football in general, is a mentally tougher and more physical game. But I think NBA has more overall pure athleticism.
Therefore, you agree with Austin Rivers.
I just, again, we'll continue
yes or no?
It's not really so much that I agree with him.
You agree with him?
I think the pattern can go, but pure athleticism, I do think the NBA has more pure athleticism than the NFL.
And you're out of
because there's no 300-pounders that can't make it up and down a court. Everybody has to be able to make it back and forth and change direction in a quick amount of time. Not everybody in the NFL can do that. The guys who can do it extremely well, but not everyone in the NFL can do that. So from a pure athleticism standpoint, I like basketball. But again, from an overall toughness, which sport's harder to play?
Myles Garrett.
Football, 100%. One guy.
Myles Garrett.
But
AJ
listen,
Brown.
folks.
What are we talking about?
That is all the time we have for Run It Back
Football
this
wins
week.
again.
I am Shane Mallory. I said it was the mentally tougher and more physical game.
I'm talking about athleticism.
With my co-host.
Short-term quickness, Ricky DeCosta.
And we will see you next week when we
Run it back.